Welcome to No Boxes, Just Verses, the podcast where we go beyond the bios, beyond the titles, and explore the lessons that have shaped today's most inspiring leaders, all through the songs that have moved them. Each week, we build a playlist of a leader's life: 5 songs, 5 lessons, one unforgettable playlist.
Let's put the pedal to the metal, let the top lean back. I don't know where we're going, I don't know what we're running to. I'm checking for you, how you feel about that. I think it's time we rendezvous.
And today, I'm honored to welcome a trailblazer in the legal profession and a tireless advocate for women's leadership, Michelle Banks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm happy to be here.
So, Michelle, we'll get into how we met and a lot of the things that have led to your extraordinary career, but even more so what you're doing now and how you're really giving back and really helping to support and sponsor so many people. We'll get into all that. But I like to start with a formal bio. We always orient our audience with that. And then we get into behind the scenes. Michelle Banks is a strategic advisor at Barker Gilmore, specializing in executive leadership coaching for women corporate general counsel. For 10 years, she served as the global general counsel of the Gap Inc. And before Gap, she worked as legal counsel for this little-known basketball team called the Golden State Warriors. She also has worked both here in the States and abroad in Tokyo, so I'm sure we'll get into that. But interestingly, Michelle co-founded the UCA Law Women Lead Network, which is a network of more than 4,500 women, student, and alumni. And she co-founded the Miss JD award-winning Ladder Up Retreat, which pairs women who are general counsel with women in law firm and associates for mentorship. She has absolutely been recognized by so many different organizations, including the American Bar Association, and she received the Margaret Brent Woman Lawyer of Achievement Award. But besides that, I will tell you that personally, that Michelle has mentored and supported and sponsored countless number of people in their journeys as attorneys, as GCs. I don't even know the number, Michelle. I don't even know if you count the number. I count myself as one of those people. It's got to be, I'm going to say in the thousands. I'm just going to put it out there. You are very generous with your time and very much really caring about the next generation and helping them be successful. So I'm super excited to get into your journey and story. Again, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Shannon.
Michelle, let's get into the young Michelle, your upbringing. Where are you from? What are you thinking about in your early years? Are you always thinking you wanted to be an attorney? The song that you pick is I Am Woman by Helen Reddy. And so I'm very interested to understand your origin story.
Well, I grew up in California in the San Francisco Bay Area. I lived in several suburbs of San Francisco growing up. And the reason that I picked I Am Woman is because my parents really raised my sister and I to believe that we could be anything. There was no sense in our house, especially with my father, who was quite a manly man. There was no sense that he was sad that he didn't have boys or that because we were girls, we were in any way limited in what we could do. My parents were very empowering as parents. They exposed us to lots of different things. My father would take us hunting and fishing. I mean, he really just didn't focus. My sister was a great horseback rider, which was inspired by my father. He was not at all focused on the fact that we were girls, and we were very much led to believe that in our lives and in our careers, we could be and do anything that we chose. And so as I've gotten older, I've really reflected on how important that has been to me, always believing that I could do anything and be anything, and never really questioning or holding myself back as a woman the way I see so many people do, especially in some cultures. And the reason I picked this song in particular is because I have these really fond memories of my mom and her best friend, who was also named Michelle. I'm driving around in my mom's station wagon with the girls in the car because she also had one daughter. And we would sing Helen Reddy songs, I Am Woman, and another one, Delta Dawn. We're like always on the radio in that era. And it was just really fun. We would all be singing and laughing and smiling, and there was a lot of girl power in our house, but like I said, my dad was a manly guy, and he sort of exposed us to everything.
So you're growing up in with a community and a tribe that's just super supportive. You can do whatever you want. What led you at that point in your life? Are you thinking you want to go into being a lawyer? Or are you thinking you want to do something else?
Well, it's kind of crazy. I decided I wanted to be a lawyer in something like 3rd grade. And I
Wow.
wish I could remember the teacher because this is one of those teaching assignments in elementary school that completely impacts someone's life. So, we had an assignment in school to interview someone who was a professional of any sort. You got to pick. Well, I grew up in a very blue collar neighborhood, and the only professional essentially on my street was a guy who was a lawyer. So I interviewed my next door neighbor, Dan Lanahan, and he was a lawyer and he was talking about what he did, and it sounded pretty good. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I like to write, I like to read. I could do this. This sounds pretty good. And it's just crazy to think that, because there weren't a lot of professionals on my street, because I got this assignment in 3rd grade, because Dan Lanahan, who was a great trial lawyer, happened to live next door to me, I ended up deciding in like 3rd grade that I was going to be a lawyer. And I didn't ever do anything like the type of lawyer that Dan Lanahan is, because he was an insurance defense litigator. And I was a corporate lawyer who never set foot in a courtroom hardly, but, it just goes to show you that teachers and what they expose you to can impact the rest of your life.
You said a couple really interesting things. A little bit of a side note for listeners, just because somebody is a lawyer doesn't mean they do all types of law. Because I used to get that all the time. Like
Right.
if you're the one person in the friend group or in the family, that's the lawyer. They think you can do everything. And as corporate lawyers, we're like, "Yeah, we don't go to court. Like
I
we don't
actually
do
never
that."
get asked to help anyone with anything corporate. I get divorces, dog bites, deaths, all the things that I sadly don't know very much about.
Not divorces, like, family law was the last thing I was going to go into. Like, hats off to people who can do that. I remember in law school, we had to do something in a class where you actually wound up going to court with the professor. It was like some type of class where it was like field work too, if you will. And I remember we went and we sat into some family court proceeding, and one of my roommates was really into it. And I'm like literally almost in tears listening to these stories. I was like, I could never be prosecutor or defense attorney in this in this world because I'm too upset about the story. I'm hearing now. That's not a good lawyer. That's probably not what I should do for a living. It's very interesting that at the 3rd grade, you have this exposure, and then in your mind, you're just like, "And I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm just gonna do it." And then that just carried throughout elementary, middle school. By the time you get to high school, like, at that point, you specifically know what is gonna how long it's gonna take to be a lawyer, and you weren't, like, dissuaded, "Yeah, that was just some little kid, like, fantasy. I don't wanna spend 7 years after high school to try to obtain this, like, career." It sounds like you doubled down.
I did because I think that I loved school. School was heaven to me. And it was very challenging later as a mother because my son hates school, but I loved school. So, no, not only did I become a lawyer, but I went straight through and was happy to do so because school was a very interesting environment for me. I love learning.
And that'll carry out throughout your career. We'll get through because you are constantly learning and exposing yourself to new things, even this part of your life. So we'll get into that. But quick question. Did Dan ever get to see that you actually went to law school and passed the bar and became a lawyer? Did he ever get to see that?
He did, and I kept in touch with his family. In fact, one of his daughters, he had 3 daughters, and one of them is still one of my sister's best friends. They were the exact same age and are still quite close. And I was unable, sadly, to attend his funeral, but I wrote a note to his wife and his daughter, who is a lawyer, and to my sister's best friend, and told the story. And they didn't all know the story, and those who didn't really, I think, appreciated it, and I just wanted them to know what an important influence he was on me.
Yeah. I love those stories. I love those people who are, not well known, not celebrities, but really are your local heroes, quite frankly, that changed the trajectory of lives of people in their orbit and communities. And I think we don't celebrate them enough.
That's right.
Okay, so you grew up in the Bay Area, you have a really good childhood, you feel very supported, you're very driven, and you get to this next phase of life, you wind up going to talk about you go to college and law school, you go straight, you're fairly driven. Not fairly driven, you're very driven. And then you start in your young adulthood. So the song that you pick is called I love this song from the '80s. I can actually see the music video with the hair and the neon colors. It's a very '80s song. Girls Just Wanna Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper.
Yes, and I picked that song because I worked really hard, especially when I worked in 3 law firms, but even early in my in-house legal career as a corporate lawyer, I worked very long hours. I was very focused, especially being the first person in my family to go to college and then law school and become a lawyer. I was very determined to not only meet but exceed expectations of the partners in the firm, of my clients. So I worked super hard. But what I loved is that I also had this community that played hard. And so I'm a people person and I have a big family that's a lot of fun. And I've always had a huge circle of friends. And even if I was working record hours at whatever workplace I was in, I would always make time. If I got off work at 10 o'clock at night, I'd be like that person who would go out to dinner. And when I was living in New York City and Tokyo, you could actually do that. It's harder in San Francisco to do that. But no matter what time I got off, 10, 11, 12, I was out clubbing at midnight. I was traveling. I would meet my parents. They would go on a lot of vacations and I would meet them even if it was crazy, even if it meant traveling across the world for a couple of days or meeting them somewhere across country. I worked hard, but I always had the influence of being with the people who were important to me too, whenever I could squeeze it in.
You go to law school at UCLA. Did you go there for undergrad as well?
Yes, I stayed there for 7 years.
And how did that come about? Like, you grew up in the Bay Area, but you go down to LA. How'd you pick UCLA? And then you double down and look, I did the same thing. I went to the University of Virginia for 7 years straight. But I'd love to hear your story as to why you did the 7 years straight at UCLA.
The funny thing is, I think I went to UCLA for the same reason that my son went to college in Southern California. I loved California. So I wanted to go to away to school, but I guess I didn't want to go like super far away. At least at the college stage, I was very intrigued by the notion of going somewhere with warmer weather and with a bigger city. Because San Francisco is a relatively small major city, and LA is one of the biggest cities in the country. So I'm a city person. I was always attracted to going to a big city, LA. I loved the idea of beaches and warmer weather. And I liked the idea of I could come home fairly often and it was still in the same state, but that it was far enough away that it was different. And it worked really well for me. And because I liked it a lot and especially loved the weather and the beach life, I was happy to stay there. Although I have to admit, and I do often admit, that I was thinking of coming back home and I also applied to Berkeley and I probably would have gone there had I gotten into law school there. I applied to a number of the public universities to keep the costs down for my family, but I didn't get in. I was on the wait list and didn't get in. So I stayed at UCLA and that was fun in a way because it was something I already knew and I had friends and I already had roommates and everything.
So when you get out of law school, early in your career, take us to where you go, law firm life, and then eventually you go in-house and why you decide to go in-house. But take us through, because you live quite a few places, how that comes about. Your early in career song is Take Me Home Country Roads. And that's a John Denver classic. So love to hear the story behind why you picked that song.
I picked that song not because I'm a country person, because like I said, I'm a city person and I've never actually been to West Virginia, despite the fact that I've been to 30 or 40 states. But I picked that song because one of the biggest, I think, early learnings for me in my career was that culture matters. that feeling comfortable and having a sense of belonging in an environment was really important to me. And I got to tell you, the first, I don't know how many places I worked, I didn't fit in. I was countercultural. I had funny experiences at just about every workplace, mostly shocking people with what I wore. And it was not that radical. This was back in the day when women wore skirts and bow ties and pantyhose. And I was countercultural at the first, I think, 4 or 5 places I worked. And then I got to Gap. And it was really the first time I felt 100%, maybe 150% at home
Okay.
in the work culture of the work environment. And I realized that was so important to me, that I was a culture person, that feeling comfortable, that feeling like this was my place and these were my people was really important to me. And it's not like I wasn't successful in the first 4 or 5 places that I worked, but I just was able to take things to the next level. And Gap had these cultural tenets that were so amazing. Do the right thing. Do more than sell clothes, which meant giving back to the community.
Mm.
Do the right thing was about bringing sustainability to the apparel business and doing work in the community for women. And so later, when I got to lead those efforts, to me, that was just the ultimate fit of my passion and my work. And I realized that feeling at home in a work environment can help you become a really successful leader instead of feeling like an outsider in wherever you are and feeling like you don't fit in. And it's as simple as what clothes you wear, but it could also be bigger and more important things.
Before you get to Gap in the Bay Area, you were practicing law, I guess, in LA.
Yes. And then I went to Tokyo and then to New York.
And how does Tokyo come about? And at this point, so now you're an expat, I guess, in Tokyo.
Yes.
Tell us how that comes about and what is it like living in Tokyo?
What happened is one of my law firms that I worked at asked me if I would consider going to be seconded, as they called it, which is basically loaned to a client.
Right.
So I agreed to go work in house in a corporate law department of a Japanese company in Tokyo for a year. And it was a great experience, actually. So I was always a corporate lawyer. I was really interested in learning about what it was like to work in a company. I had always envisioned doing a semester abroad or somehow ending up living overseas. It never worked out for one reason or another for me. And I never would have pictured Asia or Japan, but it was such a unique opportunity. I really jumped at it and I moved there, never having been there, not knowing anyone there, not speaking the language. And so it was very foreign and I was very much of an expat, but the firm provided me quite a lot of support. I had a very important mentor in the law firm and a very important mentor in the company who helped smooth the way for me.
I'm such a big proponent of, I tell all young people, try to get an opportunity to get outside of your comfort zone, live outside of if you are based in the United States, or live outside of your home country, wherever you're based, just because this is a global world.
Gap actually ended up hiring me in large part because of my experience in Japan. And Gap did have a business and experience in Japan at the time, but I was also responsible for all of Europe and other countries of the world. But what you realize is when you develop cultural competency, it applies across the board. If
Yep.
you figure it out in one country, you can
Yep.
figure it out in general.
Yeah.
So it served me well. But what happened is I came back from Tokyo to my firm because it was a 1 year assignment. They actually asked me to stay a second year. But because I was there by myself, I was homesick and I really missed my family. So I wanted to go back home, although I really liked the job. So I went back to my law firm and business was down. It was one of the times in the economy where the Southern California economic environment was slow and New York was going gangbusters. So since they didn't have enough work to keep me busy full time in Southern California after I'd been gone a whole year, they said, would you be willing to go help our corporate group in New York? Because they're dying and we don't have enough work to keep you busy here. And I was like, sure, I always wanted to go spend time in New York. And I jumped on it. And that was a little different because that was supposed to be a 6-month assignment. I ended up staying happily for 2 years.
And what brought you back to the Bay Area?
A couple of things, mostly my family. After being gone by then for 3 years, I was ready to come back to California. I have a fun, close family that I missed, and my parents came to visit me in New York and worked on me for a week.
So one thing is for sure in this part of your journey, you continued to do things that were uncomfortable, that were different. You continued to challenge yourself. And I'm sure there were some times where you second guessed, oh, I don't know why I'm doing this. But it winds up actually helping you so much further in your career that you had done those things. Because by the time you get to Gap, I think all of those experiences really not only help you get your foot in the door, but I think they help propel you as well once you're in the roles.
Definitely, and I picked the song "We Are the Champions" in
Yeah.
part because I just have always felt like it was my best hype song. It just makes me feel powerful and positive, and I sing it in my head whenever I'm doing something that I wanna, like, psych myself up. But I also was thinking about things like taking risks and taking smart risks, and for me, when they asked me if I would go to Tokyo, for example, they asked a guy too. They asked a man and a woman, and he said no, and I asked him why he said no because I was trying to figure out if I was stupid for going, and he said because he was afraid that it would delay us becoming partners. And I was like, "Oh my god, that's so many years away." Because even back then, you became partner at a 7th or 8th year. Now it's like 9th or 10th or even
Right.
11th. But back then, it was like a 7 or 8-year track, and I was a 2nd year associate, and so was he. And so it's like, "Oh my god, you're in year 2 and you're already thinking about year 7 or 8." I'm like, "Who knows? There's a lot of life to live between now and then." So I'm like, "I'm going." And the funny thing is he did become a partner at the law firm and I went in-house, so we both did what was best for us.
Yeah, and I love that you picked that song "We Are the Champions" because it is, like you said, a reminder for you that you're gonna take a lot of these risks. Some are gonna work, some are not, but you keep playing that in your head, almost like you're hyping yourself up to go for it.
Probably the craziest risk that I took was probably the most important risk I took. I think going to Japan was really important, but even more important within my career at Gap, which was almost 20 years of my 30-year career. The way I moved into management was I took on to create and lead the compliance program. And at the time, I knew absolutely
Mm.
little about compliance. I knew like next to nothing about it. So that was a bigger risk and a much more high profile risk than when, as a 2nd year associate, I went to Tokyo. But I think it was probably the most important thing. When I think about, like, why did Gap pick me to be their global general counsel, it helped that I had international experience. It helped that I had a corporate background. But I actually think the most important thing was the fact that I had created and led a new function at the company and a new function that was highly visible even to the board of directors of the company. And so that really, I think, propelled me. It was how I broke into management, but I think being successful in it propelled me into leadership. So those risks, they were difficult when I was doing those aspects of my career and trying to learn, but they paid off in the long run.
And Michelle, I think you hit on a couple of really key lessons. Let's go a little bit deeper on that and explain for folks. So by the because compliance is very well known in lots of industries, et cetera, now. But we are going back 15 years, something along those lines, where is newer to companies. So at this point, you're doing a what I would call a very traditional legal role for somebody who's in-house counsel at a company. You are dealing with sometimes in-house counsels deal with everything in the kitchen sink. Sometimes you have certain functions. So explain again, like what your in-house counsel role is like at that time and then having to take on a function called compliance. This is a basically a non-legal role. So you're taking a whole different function for a company that is putting you now not necessarily as the lawyer at the company, but as an executive, as a leader in the company and why that's important.
In all of my law firm jobs and in all of my in-house jobs until I got mid-level at Gap, I had been a corporate lawyer and a commercial lawyer. So I did M&A deals for people. I took companies public. I drafted contracts for people. It was very transactional oriented, and I liked that. I liked doing the deal and building things. I worked on projects that were real estate oriented as well to build things, but everything I did was very transactional. I really didn't have any regulatory or litigation experience at all. And I didn't have any experience outside of legal, to your point. And so when Sarbanes-Oxley was adopted, GAAP needed to put a Sarbanes-Oxley compliance program in place. And then they decided to take their other compliance programs, like their product compliance program and some of their other programs, and put them all together and create a compliance function. And I had done a special project because of my international experience to help the company translate their code of business conduct, which is basically the ethics and the way that the company does business, into different languages. And somehow that resulted in me being the code of conduct person, and then I should be the compliance person. But I didn't even know really what the elements of a compliance program were. So I had a lot to learn. And to your point, I ended up managing a team that was fewer lawyers and more people who were not lawyers. And you do a lot of things around data and around training. And there's a lot of non legal aspects to compliance, which is fun and interesting and exciting. But it's also a lot to learn when you don't have any exposure or experience to it. But because I was able to hire this team and they were able to be fairly successful at the company, they started giving me more and more responsibilities, because I think you become known as someone who can create things and that can build teams and manage high performing teams. Then privacy came along and everybody had to have a privacy program. So let's give that to Michelle. After that, it was like I just built my areas of responsibility around things people didn't want, or things that needed to be created, or things that were looking for a home. And it was great for me, because then it ultimately led to me being considered to be the general counsel or chief legal officer. And then after that, ultimately, I had about 120 people that were in the legal team, and I managed 5 other functions as well. And I had about 250 people in about 15 countries around the world at the end of my executive mode. And people always say to me, "Why did you retire young?" And I said, it was dog years, because you're working for a Fortune 200 company who has employees in 30 countries, does business in 50 countries. You have a team in 15 countries. You buy legal services in 200 countries. Pretty much 24/7 you are on. I took 4 days off where I was disconnected and on a true vacation when I went on an African safari. But in the 10 years I was the global general counsel of GAAP, I had 4 days off. 10
We're gonna
years was long enough.
we're gonna talk about how we're making up for those 4 years in a minute. But what I will say is thank you for explaining that. So, Michelle, you're at one of the largest apparel companies in the world. You have little Michelle, who in the 3rd grade said, "I'm gonna be a lawyer," has now become an executive, right? You're an executive. You are reporting to a board of directors. You are dealing with public company problems. This is a whole, in my opinion, a whole different level of I'm just going to become a lawyer. And you have a family.
Yes.
I love to ask this question of high power executives, in particular women. So, do we have work life balance?
No, I had
Exactly.
none. I had work-life integration. I worked 24/7, literally, but I just found ways to make it work. I'm that mom taking phone calls on the side of the soccer field. I'm the mom reading documents at the baseball game. But I'm trying to show up. I even went to a few field trips here and there. I remember going to the zoo once. I tried. I did my best. As my mother used to tease me, I was never going to win a Mother of the Year award. But on the other hand, I did do my best to do the juggle, and my mom helped me a lot. Actually, part of the reason that my parents now live in San Francisco is because they kindly moved here when I had my son, and especially when I became general counsel of GAAP. My mom just swooped in and helped us
Yeah.
tremendously. She literally
Yeah.
moved 2 blocks from my son's school.
I think that's important to share because there are a lot of young professionals listening to this podcast and beating themselves up about not having that balance and et cetera. And I always say, all you can do is your best. Sometimes your personal life is going to take a hit. Sometimes your professional life is going to take a hit. There's just different seasons in this life. All you can do, though, is your best. And here's the and most interesting thing about it. When I go back, I know your son is now an adult. My sons are adults and you ask them about the things you remember, like, "Oh, remember that day I was late to pick you up or I didn't come to the game?" They're like, "What?" They don't even remember. That we remember a lot of that stuff and internalize
Oh,
a lot of it.
I'll never forget as long as I live. Someone asked my son in front of me what his mother did, and he goes, "I don't know, but she's always on her BlackBerry," dating myself. That was back then. But I was like, "Oh my god, this is all my son knows about what I do. I am always on my phone."
I have a let me tell you, I have a similar story. My kid had to do something where you had to come up with name, like, what superhero your parent would be, and my superhero name was Electricity Girl. He's like, "'Cause you're always on your phone or you're always on your computer." He's like, "She's Electricity Girl."
That's better than your hair's on fire, I
No,
guess.
that's true, but they turn out all right. You do your best, and then you gotta give yourself some grace, especially when you look back on it. You did your best, and so I'm sure you would win some Mother of the Year awards. I don't agree with that. I think you
I
absolutely
won a lot
would.
of awards, but none of them had to do with motherhood, I must admit.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. But here's the thing, you wind up retiring. I put retiring in air quotes, and so if you're listening on a podcast platform and you can't see the video, I'm air quoting the Michelle retired because she winds up pivoting into a new profession or a related profession. I'm gonna say related profession because you'll share with the listeners what you're doing, but I honestly think you were doing this anyway. You were doing this while you were general counsel. I think it's just who you are. You just turned it into maybe more of a profession and a career or job or whatever you want to call it. But you've been doing this for probably 25 years. Certainly I met you 10 years ago and you were doing it then. So let's go into what's going on today. The song that you pick, I love this song, Imagine by John Lennon. Explain to the listeners this big pivot.
To your point, it was a pivot and it wasn't. I mean, it was a big pivot to retire from the corporate world and start my own business and take a year off. So, first thing I did was the biggest difference. I literally promised my family and myself that I would take a year off, and I took a full year, almost exactly to the day off. And I just had fun. I spent tons of time with family, friends. I reunited with people I hadn't seen in years. I did a lot of fun travel all around the world, all around the country. I did a lot of pro bono things that were important to me and things that I had meant to do for years. My sorority, for example, had been asking me to come and be the keynote speaker at their annual event for 5 or 10 years. And I finally went to Dallas and did it. And my two best friends from the sorority went with me. We made it this super fun girls' trip, and it was awesome. So I literally just had fun for a year. And then, right when I was thinking, okay, what am I actually going to do for the next 20 years? Because I am too high energy to bounce off the walls of my house and drive my family crazy. Bob Barker from Barker Gilmore called me up and said, "Hey, we're thinking of starting a new line of business. We're going to do some consulting in addition to recruiting. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. Consulting doesn't sound good for me. It's not a good fit for me. I'm retired." And he goes, "There's one other thing we're thinking of expanding actually into 3 lines of business. And the other new one would be coaching." And I'm like, "Tell me a little more about that." And I said to him exactly what you just said to me, which is that's what I already do. I've been doing that for 10 years. And even the year that I was unemployed and taking my sabbatical, I was still coaching all 10 of my GAP mentees pro bono and never thought much about it. And so I said to Bob, wow, if somebody is going to pay me to do this, my husband will be so happy because it's what I already do and it's what I love to do. So if you're going to pay me to do it, my husband will be really happy about that. So I have my own business in part where I do professional speaking and training and coaching. And then I do most of my in-house lawyer coaching through a firm, Barker Gilmore. And it's great. It's a group of about 20 of us former corporate general counsel who coach people who are corporate lawyers. And we do different things, but what I personally do, I have a lot of passion about helping women executives. So I focus on women's leadership and helping women in particular, and it's been a lot of fun.
Not only has it been a lot of fun for you, because I follow you on social media and things of that nature, it really was a innate calling for you. Because to the point, you had been doing it for a lot of people, for a lot of organizations, and you continue to do it under this new company, but you also pour a lot of that thought leadership for all of us. So listeners, you'll give your LinkedIn and stuff should definitely follow. And most recently, when you and I connected, there was this LinkedIn post I shared with you. I reached out to you right away where it was talking about how you were literally shutting down for, I want to say like the month of August. That might have been for 2 months, but it was definitely a month where you were like, hey, I'm not going to be posting. I'm not going to be responding to emails. Don't text me. I am literally taking this time to focus on me, joy, whatever. And I remember just feeling very, first thinking about, could I actually do that? And then I was like, she's doing it. And then just feeling like comfortable with seeing like I had the permission to do something like that because I grew up very similar with parents that were like, work really hard, you gotta work hard, you always work, you sleep when you die type of thing. And I shared with you, I reached out and I said, next year I'm going to intentionally carve out that time. But this year I actually took off 2 weeks. That was a start. And the first 2 days, I think I told you, were a little unsettling because I was like, I'm not responding to stuff. But by day 3, it felt good to really let go.
The way I think about it is in my retirement from corporate life, I wanted it to be different. I wanted to keep a piece of that year off with me. So, inspired by my friend Paula Edgar, I decided to try to take a summer sabbatical every year. And my goal every year is to take June, July, August off. And I have done it a few times, but a lot of years I can't do the whole 3 months. So, this year, for example, I did June and July, but not August. But even 2 months or a month makes a huge difference and is a benefit and a pleasure of not having a full-time corporate job. And after having law firm and corporate jobs for a long time, and I think before I retired from the corporate world, with your air quotes, I had never taken a vacation longer than 10 days, except when I got married. I took 2 weeks, but I would go all around the world in 10 days or less, sometimes 5 days or less. I just never had the benefit of time. To your point, even 2 weeks feels like this huge luxury. So I started trying to take a month or 2 or 3 of the summer off, and I've been hit or miss. But this year I did do 2 months, and it was a real joy. And I did great things. And when you coach corporate executives at the senior most level, you can't just abandon them for a month or two. So what I do is I don't take any speaking engagements. I don't take any new clients. And I basically just minimally support my existing clients. But I think it really refreshes and recharges me, gives me a lot of time to reflect and learn and just come back with sort of new ideas and inspiration that hopefully my clients benefit from.
I have 2 questions. First question is, what advice do you have to someone who has not been able to, air quotes, retire? So they're still in corporate America or professional services at a law firm or whatever. What advice do you have to them about just how can they work this recharge in? Because they clearly can't take off 2 months. But what advice do you have for them is my first question. And then the second question we got to get back to is the song Imagine and why.
Sure. I guess what I would say is do longer than you're doing. So if you normally take a week, try to take 2 weeks, try to take 10 days, try to take 12 days. I remember the first time I took a 12-day vacation was when I went to Africa, and that felt like such a big deal. So I think whatever you're used to, just try to do it longer. Take baby steps to get more and more comfortable because it really does make a difference. Because to your point, it takes 2 or 3 days to decompress and to let go. So
Right.
if your vacation is 5 days, that's not really a vacation. Then you need a vacation from your vacation. And then the song Imagine is one of my favorite songs. And the reason why I picked it is because I feel like in this phase of my life, I am really about defining success and defining success differently than maybe we were taught to define it. So I feel like, particularly people in professions like law, grow up or are trained to believe that everything is a path. It's a very rigid path. There's a lot of discipline associated with it. And your parents, your teachers, your professors, your partners are telling you what success looks like. I have been really inspired by a project that I did a couple years ago to work on a book with 22 other women called Women in Law Discovering the True Meaning of Success. And the premise of the book is that success is individual and that each person should be empowered to define success for themselves. I think particularly with lawyers, about half, we were all trained as lawyers, about half of us are still practicing, about half are not. But we all agree on this one theme, which is that you have to define success for yourself. And at the end of the day, it's not about the awards that you've won or the accolades you've received or the prestige of your title or your compensation. It's really, how do you feel about your life and your career? And what do you want? Some people say, what do you want your eulogy to sound like? And it's not going to be anything probably about how much money you made or what your office looked like or anything like that. And so we're really trying to get the message out. And we feel really good that the book has been really well received. Lots of lawyers and people who are not lawyers are reading it. A lot of people said that they felt like it empowered them. And what really had the biggest impact on me, as you mentioned, I started the group with a co-founder, Nancy A. Bell, UCLA Law Women Lead. And they asked me to do a webinar last year with some successful women that graduated from our law school. And I told them all about the book and I asked them how they would define success. And it was fascinating because they had really different answers. One, maybe a traditional answer, success is influence. But the answer that sticks with me the most to this day, and is the reason I picked the song Imagine, is the woman who said, peace. Success to me is peace. And again, Imagine has always been my favorite song, or one, I actually think it's probably my all-time favorite song. And at its core, to me, Imagine is about living in a world of peace. And that was just, to me, the best definition of success and the best way that I can express that success looks different to different people. And in particular, I feel like women need to be empowered to define success differently, especially differently than it was defined in the 1950s workplace, which some of our professions have not moved all that far forward from.
I love so much about what you just said, and especially in this stage of life, even for me, it really is about, I like to say, you got to run your own race. Can't run somebody else's race. You got to run your own race. And so my success versus your success versus someone else's success is just not going to be the same. And I wish I had come to that sooner
Yeah.
in my professional career because it would have saved a lot of heartache, for sure.
Which is why I just hope, and a lot of our promotions for the book is we're trying to convince people, buy the book for your mentees, for your children. I get so excited when just the other day, a woman told me her daughter was going to law school and she bought the book. But I have other friends who tell me they're giving it to their kids for high school graduation or whatever. And that really is exciting to me because I hope the fact that we show so many different pathways and so many different career possibilities and different ways, to your earlier point about the fact that we've balanced our family life, our personal life, our careers differently. I really hope that it inspires and empowers people to feel like they can define success for themselves, and also that your definition of success can change over time because lives are long, careers are long.
I couldn't have said it any better. And what a nugget to drop. And even as you said it, I got a chill because I was like, yes, this is exactly how I feel. Like success today was not the same as how I defined success 10 years ago. And that's okay. It's actually
Yeah.
okay. I want to make sure our listeners know how they can find you, how they can follow you, because I love the stuff that you post. More importantly, I also want to know how we can support you and your initiatives and what you're working on.
Sure. Anyone can follow me on LinkedIn, and I always connect with people if they tell me that they heard me speak at an event or on a podcast. So I'm happy to do that. Michelle Banks on LinkedIn. And the proceeds of our book go to the nonprofit Ms. JD. And if anyone wants to buy our book for themselves or for a gift for someone, that will benefit a charity that's near and dear to my heart, empowering younger women. And what I love about Ms. JD is they work with women beginning in middle school to try to inspire them to consider law as a potential career.
Well, I certainly will be buying that book for several people in my life, starting with my young people, my young sons, especially my one that's about to graduate from college. This is a great book for him to read. So I'll be supporting it. We will include links to the book, to the nonprofit Miss JD, and to your LinkedIn in the show notes. So listeners, you will be able to easily get to those. And I really hope you consider not only supporting the nonprofit, but get that book. I'm literally going to get it as soon as we get off of this podcast. That's for myself too. But Michelle, we also like to ask our guests, I'll do a recap of all of your songs in your playlist, and people can find it on Spotify. But what's that one song? We need a bonus song for you, a song that when Michelle's walking down the street or is just listening to stuff on her playlist, it's the song that makes you happy and brings you joy.
Well, I've always loved Elton John, and I've always liked the idea of your song, having a song just for you. I think that just gives me a happy, special feeling. So that's one of my favorite songs, and that's the song I would mention.
Oh my gosh, no one's mentioned that song, but that is I heard that song probably like a couple weeks ago and I hadn't heard it in like years. Like just hadn't heard it. I think I was in an airport and I heard that song. I don't believe in coincidence. I just think, oh, good, somebody actually picked that song. It's such a good one. Michelle, look, I'm going to recap your songs real quick before we say goodbye. But what I will say is your playlist, just like you, is full a lot of heart and passion, and it's reflective, but it's also got a little bit of party to it. And that's who you are. It's got a little bit of fun to it as well. And I like all of those things. So the first song you had was I Am Woman, followed by Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Good old Cyndi Lauper with the hair and remember the gloves? Gotta watch that video of a classic song. Actually, the rest of these are super classic songs as well. Take Me Home, Country Roads, followed by We Are the Champions. We rounded out with Imagine, and your bonus song is just almost that, Your Song by Elton John. Michelle, I've had so much fun talking to you on No Box Just Verses. Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for being a sponsor, a supporter of me and so many people that I know in my tribe. Thank you for being you. And we continue to want to support you. So please keep it up. Please. We need you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Shannon.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to No Boxes, Just Verses. And if this episode moved y'all, please share it, rate us, follow the show on your favorite platform, and we can keep building our leadership playlists together. So you can find me, guys, on Instagram as Shannon Nash1 and No Boxes Just Verses on Instagram. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Shannon Nash ESQ CPA. You can also find No Boxes Just Verses on LinkedIn. You can visit our website at noboxesjustverses.com. Finally, don't forget to check out the show notes. The show notes are super important because this is where the playlists will live. You will be able to get these playlists on Apple and Spotify. You'll also be able to follow up and see how to reach out to the guests, follow them, and support them. Until next time, I need you to stay unboxed. You come for the stories, but you stay for the playlists. I'm Shannon Nash, and I'm out.